do around the carcass. So generally the runts in the litters are the shy ones, like Titan here, that are a little bit quieter. But sometimes those animals will sit back from the carcass when they're satisfied the other animals are getting enough food. That's often when they'll move in, sneak some and run off with it and eat it away.
How often do you feed them? Every day? Once per day?
Sorry?
How often do you feed them?
How many times do we feed them? So in general, these guys are getting something each day. To keep them within a consistent or consistent body range, weight range, we will feed them the same amount of food in a week. So in 7 days, these animals are currently getting fed about 45% of their body weight. So you're looking at about 3 to 4 kilograms in a week each of these animals will get. But what we feed to them each day will change. So this is considered to be a medium to large feed. It equates to roughly 500 grams per animal in the enclosure. Tomorrow night they might get a scatter feed, which could be maybe 200 grams per animal, kind of in small pieces thrown out through the entire enclosure. Then they might have a fast day where we don't feed them, and then we do a gorge feed, which equates to maybe 2 kilos per animal. So each week it's the same amount of food, but how much we feed to them each day will vary, basically to take out some of that routine. We do find that carnivores in particular in captivity are prone to getting bored because you do take away a large portion of what they naturally have to do, which is find their food. So it means that it becomes really hard or easy to keep them stimulated, and if you don't do that, it's very easy for them to become bored. So Devil's lives revolve around food, which makes food one of the most useful tools of behavioural enrichment that we can have. Got it off the hook there, I'm just going to try and grab it back.
Why do you touch it? Is it so they don't take it away somewhere?
Yeah, so a couple of different reasons. By pegging it down in one point, it gives them all an even chance of getting it, I suppose, because one of them's not running off with it. It also means that they're eating it nice and conveniently where you guys can see them, rather than taking it off to a den and eating it down the back in the dark. It also means I don't have to sit on the ground and hurt my legs doing it. But that said, I can quite easily sit on the ground and hold that piece of meat. It's not a safety thing necessarily for me. These animals don't perceive me as food. They're not likely to try and attack me, to kill me, to eat me. They're not big enough to see me as a viable food item. So it's not to keep me away. I could fairly easily sit on the ground there and hold that piece of meat, and there would be very, very limited interest in me. Like you can see here, very, very limited interest in me. It's more to keep them in one spot. It allows a bit more even competition as well. And we don't use it for these animals is that quarantine that I was talking about a little bit earlier. Anything that's on the other side of that fence, particularly a piece of meat, it may have had contact with wild devils. So that's the concern for us, is that anything on that other side of the fence, if it's not fresh, we don't have that guarantee of not having contact. So the meat that we use is basically come from a shooter, so we can guarantee that it is fresh and no devils have had contact with it. But we get the whole carcasses of these animals delivered to us. We don't process the meat in any way. As you can probably tell here, there's still bones on that, there's still fur on that. We don't pull any of that out. We feed out all the parts of a carcass, so we're using even things like the tails and the heads. There's very little point in processing the meat because devils quite famously consume entire carcasses. So these animals actually eat the bone and they eat the fur and they eat everything in between. So there's not a lot of point to me spending half of my day skinning wallabies when throwing in a piece of meat like that is about as close a mimic to their natural diet as we're ever really going to be able to manage. The most processing that we do is that we obviously butcher the carcasses. That's not a whole wallaby sitting there, and we do that so that we can control the amount of food, but also how we're presenting it to them. As I mentioned earlier, we don't always just chuck a huge piece in there. Sometimes we'll scatter it around. Sometimes we might do a bit of a drag in here early morning, and then later on at the night scatter some other elements in here. It's not the same thing every day, and butchering the meat allows us to be able to change that up.
And you keep them here all their lives, right?
In most cases, yes. And it is, once again, due to the disease. So for us, The aims of the breeding program is to obviously maintain healthy populations, to preserve as many as we possibly can, and then through breeding to basically continue and build on that healthy population of animals living in captivity. But the reality is that we can't necessarily keep these guys here forever. We're going to run out of space if we just keep breeding and don't release any. So the long-term aim has always been to start releasing devils back into the wild, but at this stage the disease is making that difficult just to pick these guys up and pop them on the other side of the fence because the disease is still out there. So at the moment releases are starting to happen and looking like they're going to continue happening, but all of those releases are happening, excuse me, Titan's a bit of a pain sometimes. All of those releases to date have happened in managed areas, isolated areas. So
Смотри, в фокусе теперь, ты видишь?